You know what they say about construction workers? We're supposed to be dumb. Just swing hammers, pour concrete, and keep our mouths shut while the smart people in suits make the real decisions. Well, my wife Susie believed that bullshit for 15 years, right up until the moment I proved her wrong. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Mike Patterson, and I own Patterson Construction. 3 trucks, 8 employees, and a reputation for finishing jobs on time and under budget in our little upstate New York town of Millbrook. Not exactly Fortune 500 material, but it paid for Susie's law degree and kept us comfortable in our 2-story colonial on Maple Street. The night everything changed started like any other Tuesday in October. I was in my garage, rebuilding the carburetor on my '92 Ford pickup, my therapy after dealing with demanding clients and permit offices all day. The radio was playing some classic rock, and I had a cold beer sweating on my workbench when I heard voices drifting through the thin walls. Susie was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she thought she was being clever. You know the one. Conspiratorial, excited, like a teenager planning to sneak out. "No, Mike's in the garage with his precious truck," she was saying. "He'll be out there for hours. You know how he gets with his toys." I set down my wrench and moved closer to the door connecting the garage to the kitchen. "I can't wait either, Tommy. It's been too long since we've had real time together." Tommy. My stomach dropped like I'd swallowed a brick. Tommy Brennan, Susie's cousin, the golden boy who'd moved back to town 6 months ago after his divorce. The guy who showed up to every family gathering with his perfect smile and his stories about his successful marketing career in Albany. "The cabin this weekend is perfect," Susie continued. "Mike thinks I'm going to that legal conference in Syracuse. He's so trusting, it's almost pathetic." Pathetic. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been married to this woman for 15 years, supported her through law school, celebrated every promotion at her firm, and she thought I was pathetic. I know. We have to be careful about your parents. If Uncle Frank and Aunt Linda found out," she laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. "But they won't. Mike's too dense to figure it out, and everyone else thinks we're just close cousins catching up." I stood there in my garage, oil-stained hands trembling, listening to my wife plan her weekend getaway with her cousin. Not just any cousin, the one who'd been coming around for Sunday dinners, borrowing tools from my garage, and slapping me on the back like we were best friends. "I should go," Susie said. "Mike's probably going to want dinner soon, and I need to play the dutiful wife for a few more days." The call ended, and I heard her footsteps heading upstairs. I stayed frozen in the garage for another 10 minutes, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to storm into the house and confront her right then. But the smarter part, the part that had built a successful business from nothing, told me to think this through. See, that's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. You learn to be patient. You learn to watch and listen. And you learn that the best revenge isn't hot, it's ice cold and perfectly planned. I walked back to my workbench and picked up my beer, but it tasted like ashes. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of thinking we were building something together, and she was throwing it all away for Tommy Brennan. The next morning, I watched Susie pack for her conference with new eyes. She was humming while she folded her best lingerie into her suitcase. Stuff she hadn't worn for me in months. "You sure you need to stay the whole weekend?" I asked, leaning against the bedroom doorframe. She didn't even look up. "You know how these things are, honey. Networking dinners, early morning sessions. It's easier to just stay over." "Right. Well, have fun learning about," what was the topic again? "Estate planning and tax law." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly, I almost believed it myself. Sounds riveting. I kissed her cheek, tasting her expensive perfume. "Drive safe." After she left, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and started making a list. Not a revenge list, not yet, just a fact-gathering list. Because if Susie thought she was dealing with some dumb construction worker, she was about to learn otherwise. First, I called the Syracuse Convention Center. No legal conference that weekend. Strike one. Then I drove over to Tommy's apartment complex. His car was gone, but I had a friendly chat with his neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who was always eager to gossip. "Oh yes, Tommy left early this morning," she told me while watering her flowers. "Had a big suitcase and everything. Said he was going up to his family's cabin at Lake George for some R&R. Lake George, 2 hours north of Syracuse, in the complete opposite direction. Strike two. I spent the rest of Friday calling in favors. When you've been in construction for 20 years in a small town, you know people. Electricians, plumbers, mechanics, guys who work everywhere and see everything. By Saturday afternoon, I had confirmation. Jerry Kowalski, who did electrical work at the Lake George Marina, had seen Susie's BMW parked at the Brennan family cabin, right next to Tommy's Audi. Strike three. That evening, I was nursing a beer at Murphy's Tavern when my phone buzzed. A text from Susie. "Conference is going great. Learning so much. Miss you." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Miss you too. Can't wait to hear all about it." The lies came so easily to both of us now. "You look like someone pissed in your beer," said a voice behind me. I turned to see Danny Murphy, the bar owner and my old boxing coach from high school. Danny had a gift for reading people. Came in handy when you spent 30 years breaking up bar fights. "Just thinking about some business stuff," I said. Danny slid onto the stool next to me. "Business stuff, my ass. I've seen that look before. Usually right before someone gets their nose broken." I took another sip of beer. "What would you do, Danny, if you found out someone you trusted was screwing you over?" "Depends. We talking about money or something more personal?" "More personal." Danny was quiet for a moment, wiping down glasses behind the bar. "Well, I'd probably want to make sure they understood the consequences of their choices, but I'd be smart about it. No point in going to jail over someone else's stupidity. Hypothetically speaking, of course." "Of course." Danny grinned. "Hypothetically, I'd say patience is a virtue, and revenge is a dish best served cold." I finished my beer and headed home to my empty house. Susie wouldn't be back until Sunday evening, which gave me plenty of time to think and plan. Because Susie was right about one thing, I was trusting, but she was dead wrong about everything else. I wasn't dense, and I wasn't pathetic. I was just a guy who'd been playing by the rules while everyone else was cheating. Time to change the game. Sunday evening came with the kind of crisp October air that usually made me appreciate living in upstate New York. But as I watched Susie's BMW pull into our driveway, all I felt was a cold knot in my stomach. She came through the front door with her conference smile, bright, professional, and completely fake. "Honey, I'm home!" she called out, dropping her suitcase by the stairs. I was in the living room, pretending to watch football. "Hey babe, how was Syracuse?" "Exhausting but productive." She kissed the top of my head, and I caught a whiff of men's cologne that definitely wasn't mine. The hotel was terrible, though. Thin walls, noisy neighbors. I barely slept. "That's too bad. Maybe next time you should try that place up at Lake George. I hear the cabins there are nice and quiet." Susie paused for just a fraction of a second, so brief that most people would have missed it. But I was watching for it. "Lake George? That's nowhere near Syracuse, Mike." "Right, of course. I was thinking of that fishing trip I took with the guys last year." I turned back to the TV. My mistake. She relaxed and headed upstairs to unpack. I listened to her moving around up there, probably hiding evidence of her weekend. Love letters, receipts, maybe even photos. Susie always was sentimental about her affairs. Wait, affairs, plural? How long had this been going on? How many other conferences and girls' nights had actually been rendezvous with Tommy? The thought made me sick, but it also sharpened my focus. This wasn't just about one weekend. This was about months, maybe years, of lies and betrayal. Monday morning, I had breakfast with my crew at Rosie's Diner like always. These guys, Bobby Martinez, Frank Kowalski, Pete Sullivan, and Jim Chen, had been with me for years. They were more than employees, they were friends, brothers even. "You look like hell, boss," Bobby said, cutting into his pancakes. "Susie keeping you up at night?" The guys laughed, but I couldn't even fake a smile. "Just thinking about the Morrison job," I lied. "That foundation's going to be a nightmare." "Speaking of nightmares," Pete said, "guess who I saw at the gas station yesterday morning?" "Who?" "Tommy Brennan. Looked like he was coming back from somewhere. Had that satisfied cat who ate the canary look, you know?" My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Yeah? Where was he heading?" "Toward his apartment. But here's the weird thing. His car was covered in road dust, like he'd been driving for hours. And he had lake mud on his tires." Pete was a detail guy, which made him great at finish work. It also made him an excellent witness. "Probably went fishing," I said casually. "Maybe. But since when does Tommy Brennan fish? Guy can't even bait a hook without crying about the worms." The table erupted in laughter. Tommy had come on exactly one fishing trip with us, 3 years ago, and it had been a disaster. He'd spent more time complaining about the smell and the early morning than actually fishing. After breakfast, we headed to the Morrison job site. But I couldn't concentrate on work. My mind kept circling back to Susie and Tommy, trying to piece together the timeline of their betrayal. That's when my phone rang. Susie's sister, Jennifer. "Mike, we need to talk," she said, without preamble. Jennifer worked as a nurse at Millbrook General Hospital. She was direct, no nonsense, and had never particularly liked Susie's recent attitude changes. "What's up, Jen?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me for lunch? Murphy's Tavern, 12:30? "Sure, but..." "Just be there, Mike. Trust me." She hung up, leaving me staring at my phone. Jennifer wasn't the dramatic type. If she wanted to meet urgently, it was important. I found her at a corner booth at Murphy's, nursing a Diet Coke and looking uncomfortable. "Thanks for coming," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "What's going on, Jen? You look like someone died." "In a way, someone did." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Mike, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." My heart started pounding. "Okay." Susie came into the ER yesterday morning, asked me to run some tests for her, said she needed to make sure she was clean before she came home to you. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "Tests? What kind of tests?" "STD panel, full workup." Jennifer's face was flushed with embarrassment and anger. She tried to play it off like it was just routine, but Mike, she was scared, really scared. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Did you run them?" "I had to. She's my sister, and she was practically begging me. But Mike, I'm telling you because..." She paused, struggling with the words. "Because I think you deserve to know what kind of person you're married to." "What were the results?" "Clean. But that's not the point. The point is, she was worried enough to get tested, which means she's been taking risks. Big risks." I sat back in the booth, trying to process this information. Susie had been so concerned about bringing something home to me that she'd asked her own sister to run secret medical tests. The betrayal was even deeper than I'd thought. "There's more," Jennifer said quietly. "What do you mean, more?" "Tommy Brennan came in 3 weeks ago. Same tests. Also clean, but..." She shook her head. "Mike, they've been planning this, getting tested before they started sleeping together. This isn't some spontaneous affair. This is premeditated." The word hung in the air like a curse. Premeditated. They'd planned this whole thing, right down to the medical precautions. While I was working 12-hour days to keep our business afloat, Susie and Tommy were plotting their affair like it was a business merger. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Jennifer's eyes flashed with anger. "Because Susie used to be my hero. Smart, ambitious, fighting for justice as a lawyer. But lately, she's become this entitled, selfish person I don't even recognize. And because you're a good man who deserves better than being made a fool of. What do you think I should do? That's up to you. But Mike, whatever you decide, be smart about it. Susie's a lawyer. She knows how to make things difficult if you're not careful." I thanked Jennifer and drove back to the job site, but I couldn't focus on work. My crew noticed. These guys had worked with me long enough to read my moods. "Boss, you want to call it a day?" Bobby asked around 3 o'clock. "You've been staring at that same blueprint for an hour." "Yeah, maybe that's a good idea." I was packing up my tools when my phone rang again. This time it was Dave Morrison, our client. "Mike, I hate to do this to you, but I need to talk." Dave was a local accountant, a straight shooter who'd hired us based on our reputation. His tone made my stomach clench. "What's the problem, Dave?" "I got a call this morning from Susie. She said there might be some irregularities in your business finances, suggested I might want to have my own accountant review your invoices before paying." The words hit me like a physical blow. "She what?" "Look, Mike, I've known you for 10 years. I don't believe for a second that you're cheating anyone. But Susie seemed to think there might be some issues with your bookkeeping. Said she was concerned as your wife." Concerned as my wife, while she was screwing her cousin and planning to destroy my reputation. "Dave, I can have my books audited by anyone you want. Everything's clean, I guarantee it." I figured as much. But Mike, why would your own wife say something like that? I closed my eyes, feeling the walls closing in. Susie wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively trying to destroy my business, my livelihood, everything I'd built. I honestly don't know, Dave. But I'll get to the bottom of it. After Dave hung up, I called my own accountant, Helen Rodriguez. Helen had been doing my books for 8 years and knew every penny that went in and out of Patterson construction. "Mike, thank God you called," she said. "I got the strangest visit today from Susie. She wanted copies of all your financial records. Said she needed them for some kind of legal review." "Did you give them to her?" "Hell no. She's not on any of the business accounts, and she's not your power of attorney. I told her she'd need a court order or your written permission." "Good. Helen, I need you to secure everything. Change passwords, lock down access, the works." "Mike, what's going on?" "I'm not sure yet, but I think my wife is trying to sabotage my business." There was a long pause. "Jesus, Mike, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight back." That evening, Susie came home late from work, claiming she'd had to stay for a client emergency. She seemed nervous, distracted, checking her phone constantly. "Everything okay?" I asked over dinner. "Fine, just work stress." She barely touched her food. "Mike, I've been thinking. Maybe we should consider couples counseling." "Counseling? Why?" "I just feel like we've been drifting apart lately. Different interests, different goals." She looked up at me with what I now recognized as practiced sincerity. "I want us to work, but I think we need professional help." Professional help. While she was planning to destroy my business and run off with her cousin. "Sure, Susie. Whatever you think is best." She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks, probably because she thought I was buying her act. After dinner, I retreated to my garage and started making phone calls. If Susie wanted to play dirty, she was about to learn that this dumb construction worker had a few tricks of his own. My first call was to my lawyer, Patricia Wells. Pat was a scrappy solo practitioner who'd helped me set up my business and had handled a few contract disputes over the years. "Mike, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "Pat, I need to ask you something confidential. If my wife tried to access my business records or sabotage my reputation, what would my options be?" "That depends. Are we talking about a divorce situation?" "Potentially." Then we need to talk in person. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I'll be there. My second call was to Danny Murphy. Danny, remember that hypothetical conversation we had the other night? Yeah. It's not hypothetical anymore. I figured as much. You want to come by the gym? I got some ideas you might find interesting. The gym was in the basement of Murphy's Tavern, a throwback to the days when Danny had trained actual contenders. Now it was mostly a place for local guys to blow off steam and stay in shape. I found Danny working the heavy bag, his movements still sharp despite being 63. So, he said between punches, what's the situation? I told him everything. The phone call, the Lake George cabin, the medical tests, Susie's attempt to sabotage my business. Danny listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting. When I finished, he stopped punching and turned to face me. Mike, you're dealing with someone who's not just cheating. She's trying to destroy you completely. That's not passion or stupidity, that's malice. So, what do I do? Danny smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. You document everything. You protect your assets, and then you make sure she understands that actions have consequences. I'm not going to do anything illegal, Danny. Who said anything about illegal? The best revenge is completely legal and absolutely devastating. He walked over to his office and came back with a business card. This guy owes me a favor. Former cop, now runs a private investigation business. He's discreet, thorough, and he doesn't ask questions. I looked at the card. Thompson Investigations, divorce, custody, corporate security. Mike, you're a good man who's been playing by the rules, but your wife threw the rules out the window. Time to level the playing field. I pocketed the card and headed home, my mind already working on the next phase of my plan. Susie thought she was dealing with a trusting, naive husband. She was about to discover that trust, once broken, could turn into something much more dangerous: determination. The next morning, I met with Patricia Wells in her cramped office above the hardware store. Pat was in her 50s, tough as nails, and had a reputation for protecting her clients like a mother bear protecting her cubs. Mike, based on what you've told me, we need to move fast, she said, spreading papers across her desk. If Susie's trying to sabotage your business, she might be setting up for a divorce where she claims you're hiding assets or cheating clients. But I'm not. I know that, and you know that. But if she plants enough doubt, it could hurt you in court. Pat leaned back in her chair. Here's what we're going to do. First, we document everything, every conversation, every attempt to access your records, every suspicious behavior. Second, we protect your business assets. And third, we go on the offensive. What do you mean, offensive? I mean, we investigate her. If she's having an affair, we prove it. If she's planning to screw you over financially, we expose it. The best defense is a good offense. Pat handed me a thick folder. These are financial affidavits, asset protection forms, and a preliminary divorce petition. Don't file anything yet, but be ready. I left Pat's office feeling like I was suiting up for battle, which I realized I was. My next stop was Thompson Investigations. The office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a Chinese restaurant. Not exactly what I'd expected from a private investigator. Carl Thompson turned out to be a lean, gray-haired man in his 50s with the kind of eyes that missed nothing. His handshake was firm, and he got straight to business. Danny Murphy says you need help with a cheating spouse, he said, gesturing for me to sit. My wife's having an affair with her cousin, but it's more than that. She's trying to destroy my business, too. Carl nodded like he'd heard this story 100 times before. Divorce warfare. Gets uglier every year. What kind of evidence do you have? I told him about the phone call, the Lake George cabin, the medical tests, and Susie's attempts to access my business records. Good start, but we need more. Photos, documentation, financial records. Carl pulled out a contract. My rate is $75 an hour plus expenses. For what you're describing, figure about 2 weeks of surveillance and investigation. Do it. One more thing, Mike. Once we start this, there's no going back. Your marriage is over. The only question is whether you come out ahead or behind. You sure you're ready for that? I thought about Susie's laugh when she called me pathetic, about her planning to destroy everything I'd built, about 15 years of marriage thrown away for Tommy Brennan. I'm sure. That afternoon, I was back at the Morrison job site when Bobby pulled me aside. "Boss, we got a problem." "What now?" "Frank Morrison just called. Said his accountant found some irregularities in our invoices. Wants to meet tomorrow to discuss payment." My blood pressure spiked. "What kind of irregularities?" "Wouldn't say over the phone, but boss, this smells like bullshit to me." It smelled like Susie to me. Somehow she'd gotten to Morrison's accountant, planted seeds of doubt about my business practices. "Bobby, call the crew together. We need to talk." 10 minutes later, I was standing in front of my 4 best guys, trying to figure out how much to tell them. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Someone's trying to sabotage our business, spreading lies about our billing practices, trying to make us look dishonest." "Who the hell would do that?" Pete asked. I hesitated, then decided they deserved the truth. These guys had been loyal to me for years. "My wife." The silence was deafening. Finally, Jim spoke up. "Jesus, Mike, why would Susie do something like that?" "Because she's having an affair and wants to destroy me before I can expose her." Bobby's face darkened. "That's screwed up, boss. What do you need us to do?" "Keep doing good work. Document everything. And if anyone asks questions about our business practices, refer them to me or our accountant." "What about Susie?" Frank asked. "Let me handle Susie." That evening, I got home to find Susie in the kitchen, cooking dinner and humming. She seemed almost giddy, which made my stomach turn. "You're in a good mood," I said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Just had a good day at work. Won a motion for summary judgment on the Henderson case." "Congratulations." I watched her move around the kitchen, noting how she kept checking her phone. "Susie, I need to ask you something." "Sure, what?" "Dave Morrison called today. Said you contacted him about irregularities in my billing. What was that about?" Susie's hand froze on the spatula for just a moment. "Oh, that. I was just looking out for you, honey. I noticed some discrepancies when I was organizing our tax documents. Thought Dave should know in case there were any issues." "What discrepancies?" "Nothing major, just some invoices that seemed high compared to the work described." She turned to face me with that practiced smile. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." "Susie, you've never shown any interest in my business before. Why start now?" Her smile faltered slightly. "I'm your wife, Mike. I care about your reputation." "My reputation." I took a long pull of beer. "Right." We ate dinner in relative silence, Susie checking her phone every few minutes. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "Expecting an important call?" "Just work stuff. You know how it is." "Actually, I don't. Most lawyers don't get urgent texts at 8 o'clock at night." Susie's face flushed. "It's a complicated case. The client's anxious." "What's the client's name?" "What?" "The client. The one who's so anxious they're texting you during dinner." Susie stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating whether to lie or deflect. "Mike, what's with the interrogation? Since when do you care about the details of my cases?" "Since my wife started acting suspicious and trying to sabotage my business." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Susie's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, and finally, cold calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Dave Morrison, Helen Rodriguez, even your own sister. They're all telling me about your sudden interest in my affairs." Susie stood up from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. "I think you're being paranoid, Mike, and frankly, a little controlling." "Controlling? I'm asking my wife why she's spreading lies about my business." "I'm not spreading lies. I'm protecting our family's interests." "Our family's interests? Or your exit strategy?" Susie's face went pale. What's that supposed to mean? I stood up too, facing her across our kitchen table. 15 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Two people circling each other like fighters looking for an opening. It means I know about Lake George, Susie. For a moment, she looked genuinely confused. Then understanding dawned, and her face went through a series of micro-expressions that told me everything I needed to know. I don't know what you think you know, but I know you weren't at a conference in Syracuse last weekend. I know Tommy Brennan wasn't fishing, and I know you both got tested for STDs before you started screwing each other. Susie's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. Mike, don't. Just don't. I walked around the table until I was standing right in front of her. 15 years, Susie. 15 years I supported you, believed in you, trusted you, and you threw it all away for your cousin. Tears started running down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, just cold anger. It's not what you think, she whispered. Really? Then explain it to me. Explain how you ended up in bed with Tommy Brennan at his family's cabin while I thought you were learning about estate planning. Susie wiped her eyes, and I could see her lawyer training kicking in. Damage control mode. Mike, Tommy and we have history. Before I met you, we were close. Close? He's your cousin. Second cousin. And we were young and… Stop. I held up my hand. I don't want to hear your justifications. I want to know how long this has been going on. Susie was quiet for a long moment. 3 months. 3 months. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. 3 months of lying to my face. 3 months of family dinners where you both sat at my table eating my food, pretending to be my friends. Mike, please. We can work through this. It was a mistake. No, Susie. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice, a series of choices. And now I'm going to make some choices of my own. I started walking toward the garage, but Susie grabbed my arm. What does that mean? What are you going to do? I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. I'm going to make sure you understand that actions have consequences. Mike, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared, because the trusting, naive husband you've been lying to, he's gone, and you're not going to like what replaces him. I pulled my arm free and walked into the garage, slamming the door behind me. I could hear Susie crying in the kitchen, but I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Susie knew I knew. Now the real game could begin. I pulled out my phone and called Carl Thompson. Carl, it's Mike Patterson. How quickly can you get me photos of my wife and her lover? If they're still active, I can have something within 48 hours. Do it. And Carl, I want everything. Photos, financial records, phone logs, the works. I want enough evidence to bury them both. You got it, Mike. But be prepared. This is going to get ugly. I looked through the garage door window at Susie, who was still sitting at our kitchen table with her head in her hands. It already is ugly, Carl. Now it's just going to get honest. The next morning, Susie was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to my sister's to think. Need some space. S. Running to Jennifer. That was rich, considering Jennifer was the one who'd told me about the STD tests. But Susie didn't know that yet. I was drinking my coffee and planning my day when my phone rang. Frank Morrison. Mike, I owe you an apology. What do you mean, Frank? I had my accountant review your invoices like Susie suggested. Know what he found? Absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, you've been undercharging me for materials. I felt a surge of vindication. I appreciate you checking, Frank. But why are you apologizing? Because I should never have doubted you based on a phone call from someone else's wife, even if that someone is you. Frank paused. Mike, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but professionally, you're solid as a rock. Thanks, Frank. That means a lot. One more thing. My accountant said Susie seemed really disappointed when he told her your books were clean, like she was hoping to find problems. After Frank hung up, I sat in my kitchen trying to process the implications. Susie hadn't just been spreading doubts about my business. She'd been hoping to find actual evidence of wrongdoing. When that failed, she'd tried to manufacture problems. My phone buzzed with a text from Carl Thompson. "Got something. Can you meet at my office at noon?" I spent the morning at the Morrison job site, trying to focus on work while my mind raced. At 11:30, I told Bobby I had an appointment and drove to Carl's office. Carl was waiting with a manila folder and a grim expression. "Mike, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first?" "Bad news. The bad news is your wife and her cousin have been very careful. No paper trail, no digital footprints, minimal public contact." "And the good news?" Carl smiled. "The good news is they're also human, and humans make mistakes." He opened the folder and spread out a series of photographs. Susie and Tommy at a restaurant in Albany, holding hands across the table. Susie and Tommy entering a motel in Saratoga. Susie and Tommy kissing in the parking lot of a shopping mall. "These were taken over the past week," Carl said. "But there's more." He pulled out phone records. "Tommy Brennan's been calling your wife's office number 3 to 4 times a day for the past 2 months. Conversations lasting anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour." "During work hours?" "Yep. Your wife's been conducting her affair on her law firm's dime." Carl handed me another set of documents. Credit card records. Tommy's been paying for hotel rooms, dinners, gifts. But here's the interesting part. He's been using a credit card linked to a business account. "What business?" "Brennan Marketing Solutions. It's a consulting company he set up after his divorce. Looks like it's mostly a shell. No real clients, no significant income, but it does have one major expense category. Let me guess. Entertainment. Bingo. Your wife is being classified as a business expense." The irony was almost funny. Tommy was literally treating Susie like a prostitute for tax purposes. "There's one more thing," Carl said. "I did some digging into Tommy's background. His divorce wasn't as amicable as he's been telling people." Carl handed me a court document. His ex-wife accused him of having multiple affairs during their marriage, including one with a married cousin. "Susie?" "The timeline fits. This started long before 3 months ago, Mike. I think your wife has been lying about when this began." I stared at the documents, feeling the last of my illusions crumble. Susie hadn't just cheated on me. She'd been cheating on her previous relationship with me. I was the other man who'd become the husband who'd become the cuckold. "What do you want me to do with this?" Carl asked. "Keep digging. I want to know everything. Every lie, every deception, every dirty secret." "Mike, I have to ask. What's your endgame here?" I thought about Susie calling me pathetic, about her trying to destroy my business, about 15 years of my life built on lies. I want her to lose everything she cares about. Her reputation, her career, her family's respect. I want her to understand what it feels like to have your whole life destroyed by someone you trusted. Carl nodded slowly. "I can help with that. But Mike, once we go down this road, there's no coming back. You sure you're ready for total war?" "She started the war, Carl. I'm just going to finish it." That afternoon, I was back at work when Jennifer called. "Mike, we need to talk. Susie showed up at my house last night, and she's not handling this well." "What do you mean?" "She's talking about leaving town, says you're being unreasonable and she needs to get away from your anger." "Did she mention Tommy?" There was a pause. "She said Tommy's been a good friend during a difficult time in your marriage." "A good friend. Right. Mike, I told her I couldn't help her if she was lying to me. She got angry and left, but before she did, she said something that worried me." "What?" "She said you were going to regret pushing her, that you had no idea what she was capable of." I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you think she meant? I don't know. But Mike, Susie's always been vindictive when she doesn't get her way, and right now, she's desperate. After Jennifer hung up, I called Pat Wells. Pat, I need to accelerate our timeline. Susie's getting desperate, and I think she's planning something. What kind of something? I don't know, but I want to file for divorce before she can make her next move. Mike, if you file now, you'll tip your hand. She'll know you have evidence of the affair. She already knows I know about the affair. What she doesn't know is how much evidence I have. Fair point. I can have papers ready by tomorrow morning. But Mike, once you serve her, this becomes a public record. Are you prepared for the whole town to know your business? I thought about Dave Morrison's phone call, about Susie's attempts to sabotage my reputation, about Tommy Brennan sitting at my dinner table laughing at my jokes while planning to steal my wife. Pat, by the time I'm done, the whole town is going to know a lot more than just my business. That evening, I came home to find Susie in the living room waiting for me. She'd been crying, but her eyes held a cold determination that I'd never seen before. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But Mike, we can get through this. We can go to counseling, work on our problems, rebuild our trust. Trust? I laughed. Susie, you've been sleeping with your cousin for months, lying to my face and trying to destroy my business. What exactly should I trust? Her face hardened. I made mistakes, Mike. But you're not innocent in this either. What's that supposed to mean? You've been emotionally absent for years, working all the time, never talking to me, treating me like a housekeeper instead of a wife. So you decided to screw Tommy Brennan. I decided to find someone who appreciated me, someone who made me feel like a woman instead of an employee. I stared at her, amazed by her ability to rewrite history. Susie, I worked those hours to support your career, to pay for your law school, to build a life for us. A life you wanted, a small-town life with a small-town husband and small-town dreams. And what do you want? A big-city life with your married cousin? Susie stood up, her face flushed with anger. I want a life where I'm not constantly apologizing for being successful, where my husband doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting more than this mediocrity. Mediocrity? I stood up too, facing her across our living room. Susie, I built a business from nothing. I employ 8 people. I've never missed a mortgage payment or failed to provide for our family. If that's mediocrity, what does that make your affair with a divorced marketing consultant who lives in a studio apartment? Tommy understands me. Tommy's using you. He's literally claiming you as a business expense on his taxes. Susie's face went white. What? You heard me. Your romantic getaways are being written off as entertainment expenses for Brennan Marketing Solutions. That's not... He wouldn't... Carl Thompson's a very thorough investigator, Susie. Amazing what you can learn about someone when you actually look. Susie sank back onto the couch, her face crumbling. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 15 years ago, vulnerable, uncertain, human. Then her phone buzzed with a text, and I watched her face transform back into the cold, calculating stranger she'd become. This isn't over, Mike, she said, standing up and grabbing her purse. Where are you going? To talk to someone who actually cares about me. Give Tommy my regards. She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. You're going to regret this, Mike. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Is that a threat? It's a promise. After she left, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my empty living room, thinking about the woman I'd just been talking to. She wasn't the Susie I'd married. Hell, she wasn't even the Susie who'd been cheating on me. This was someone new, desperate, vindictive, and apparently willing to do whatever it took to win. I called Pat Wells. Pat, file the papers tomorrow morning. And make sure we ask for everything. The house, the business assets, spousal support, the works. Mike, That's pretty aggressive for a first filing. Susie just promised me I'd regret crossing her. I want to make sure she's the one with regrets. I finished my whiskey and headed to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. I kept thinking about Susie's final words, about the look in her eyes when she said I had no idea what I was dealing with. She was wrong about that. I knew exactly what I was dealing with. A woman who'd built her life on lies and manipulation, who was now facing the consequences of her choices. What she didn't know was that I was done being the understanding husband, the trusting fool, the convenient scapegoat for her failures. Tomorrow, the gloves would come off. I was having coffee at Rosie's diner the next morning when Pat Wells called. "Papers are filed, Mike. Susie should be served at her office within the hour." "Good. What's our next move?" We wait for her response. "But Mike, I got a call from her lawyer this morning." My stomach dropped. "She already has a lawyer?" "Richard Blackwood. He's a shark from Albany, specializes in high-conflict divorces. This isn't going to be friendly." I knew Blackwood by reputation. Expensive, ruthless, and very good at making husbands look like monsters. Susie wasn't just fighting back, she was bringing in heavy artillery. What did he want? To discuss a settlement, said his client was willing to be reasonable if we were. What's reasonable to Susie? Half of everything, including your business, plus spousal support for 5 years. I nearly choked on my coffee. She wants half my business? The business she was trying to sabotage? Mike, she's claiming she contributed to its success through emotional support and financial advice. Financial advice? She tried to convince my clients I was stealing from them. I know, but Blackwood's good at spinning stories. We need to be prepared for a fight. After Pat hung up, I sat in the diner trying to process this new development. Susie wasn't just defending herself. She was going on the offensive, trying to take everything I'd built. My phone buzzed with a text from Bobby. "Boss, you need to get to the Morrison site. Now." I drove over to find my entire crew standing around looking uncomfortable. Dave Morrison was there too, along with a woman in a business suit I didn't recognize. "Mike, this is Inspector Williams from the Department of Labor," Dave said. "She's here about some complaints regarding your business practices." Inspector Williams was a stern-looking woman in her 50s with a clipboard and the kind of expression that suggested she'd already made up her mind about me. "Mr. Patterson, we've received allegations that you've been misclassifying employees as independent contractors to avoid paying proper wages and benefits. That's ridiculous. All my guys are full-time employees with benefits. We'll need to see your employment records, tax documents, and payroll information." "Fine. But who made these allegations?" Inspector Williams consulted her clipboard. The complaint was filed by Susie Patterson. She identified herself as having intimate knowledge of your business operations. Of course it was Susie. She'd escalated from trying to plant doubts to filing official complaints with government agencies. "Inspector Williams, Susie Patterson is my wife, and we're currently going through a divorce. This complaint is retaliation, not a legitimate concern about labor practices." "That may be, Mr. Patterson, but I still have to investigate." I spent the next 3 hours providing documentation to prove that my business was completely legitimate. Inspector Williams was thorough but fair, and by the end of her review, she seemed satisfied. "Mr. Patterson, your records appear to be in order. I'll file a report stating that the allegations were unfounded." After she left, Dave Morrison pulled me aside. "Mike, I'm sorry about this. I had to call it in when the complaint was filed, but I never believed it for a second." "I know, Dave. This isn't your fault. Is there anything I can do to help?" I thought about it for a moment. "Actually, yes. If anyone else contacts you with questions or complaints about my business, I'd appreciate a heads up." "You got it." That afternoon, I was back at my office when Carl Thompson called. "Mike, we've got a problem. Tommy Brennan's been asking questions about me around town. I think he knows he's being investigated." "How would he know that?" "Only one way," Susie told him, "which means she's coordinating her defense with her lover." I felt a surge of anger. Even in the middle of a divorce, Susie was still protecting Tommy. What does this mean for our investigation? It means they're going to be more careful, but it also means they're worried. People don't hire lawyers and file false complaints unless they're scared. So what's our next move? We accelerate. I've got enough evidence to prove the affair, but I want to dig deeper into their finances. If they're planning to run off together, they might be hiding assets. Do it. That evening, I came home to find my front door standing open. I approached carefully, but the house was empty. However, it had been thoroughly searched, drawers pulled out, papers scattered, my home office ransacked. I called the police, and Officer Martinez arrived within 10 minutes. Any idea who might have done this, Mike? My wife. We're going through a divorce, and she's been escalating her tactics. Was anything taken? I looked around carefully. My laptop was still there, along with my TV and other valuables. But my filing cabinet had been broken into, and several folders were missing. Financial documents, business records, personal papers. You want to press charges? I thought about it. Pressing charges would escalate things even further, but it would also create a paper trail of Susie's behavior. Yeah, I want this documented. After Officer Martinez left, I called Pat Wells. Pat, Susie broke into my house and stole my financial records. Jesus, Mike, did you call the police? Already done, but Pat, what was she looking for? Probably evidence to support her claim that she deserves half your business. Or maybe she's looking for dirt to use against you. What kind of dirt? Anything. Hidden assets, questionable expenses, personal information she can twist to make you look bad. I thought about my missing files. Most of the financial information was backed up digitally, but there had been some personal documents, letters, photos, mementos from our marriage. Pat, can she use stolen documents in court? If she can claim she had a right to access them as your spouse, maybe. But the break-in works in our favor. It shows she's desperate and willing to break the law. After Pat hung up, I walked through my violated home, trying to figure out Susie's endgame. She was facing a divorce with evidence of adultery, her lover was being investigated, and now she'd committed breaking and entering. What was she thinking? My phone rang. Jennifer. Mike, Susie just left my house. She's not thinking clearly. What do you mean? She came over crying, saying you'd hired private investigators to spy on her and that you were trying to destroy her career. I'm trying to protect myself, Jen. She's the one who started this war. I know. But Mike, she's talking about fighting back in ways that scare me. What ways? She said she has information about you that could ruin your reputation. Things from your past that she's kept secret. I felt a chill. What things? She wouldn't say. But Mike, she seemed almost unhinged, like she's lost touch with reality. After Jennifer hung up, I tried to think of what Susie might be referring to. What secrets from my past could she use against me? Then it hit me. 10 years ago, I'd had a brief affair with a client's wife. It had lasted 3 weeks, ended badly, and nearly destroyed my marriage. Susie and I had gone to counseling, worked through it, and I'd thought it was behind us. But Susie was a lawyer. She knew how to weaponize information. I called Carl Thompson. Carl, I need you to find someone. Linda Morrison, no relation to Dave. She was married to a client of mine about 10 years ago. What's the connection? I had an affair with her. It ended badly, and she moved away after her divorce. But if Susie's looking for dirt on me, she might try to bring Linda back to testify about your character. Smart thinking, Mike. I'll track her down. And Carl, I need you to find out everything about Susie's law practice. Client lists, case histories, anything that might give us leverage. That's going to be tricky. Attorney-client privilege and all. Then find another way, because Susie's about to go nuclear, and I need ammunition to fire back. I spent the rest of the evening securing my house and changing locks. Susie still had keys, but she wouldn't be getting in again without breaking a window. As I worked, I thought about how quickly my life had disintegrated. 2 weeks ago, I'd been a happily married businessman with a successful company and a stable life. Now, I was in the middle of a war with a woman who seemed determined to destroy everything I cared about. But Susie had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. She thought I was just a dumb construction worker who would roll over and accept whatever she dished out. She was about to learn otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You have 24 hours to drop the divorce and the investigation, or everyone in town will know what kind of man you really are. S." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Bring it on." The war was about to begin in earnest. The next morning brought the kind of crisp November air that usually made me appreciate small-town life. But as I drove to work, I felt like I was heading into battle. My phone had been buzzing all morning with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I'd stopped answering after the third one turned out to be a reporter from the Albany Times-Union asking for comment about allegations regarding my business practices and personal conduct. Susie had made good on her threat. Whatever dirt she thought she had on me was now public knowledge. I pulled into the Morrison job site to find my crew huddled around Bobby's phone, their faces grim. "Boss," Bobby said as I approached, "you need to see this." He handed me his phone, which was displaying a Facebook post from a profile I didn't recognize. But the photo was definitely Susie, and the post was a long, detailed account of our marriage that painted me as an abusive, controlling husband who cheated on his wife and stole from his clients. "There's more," Pete said, pulling out his own phone. "It's all over social media. Someone's been posting this stuff since about 6 this morning." I scrolled through post after post, each one more damaging than the last. Photos of me with Linda Morrison from 10 years ago, taken from security cameras and made to look recent. Financial documents that had been doctored to suggest I was skimming money from jobs. Even quotes from anonymous sources claiming I was violent and unstable. "This is all bullshit," I said, handing the phones back. "We know that, boss," Jim said, "but a lot of people don't." As if to prove his point, my phone rang. Dave Morrison. "Mike, I'm getting calls from reporters asking about your business practices. What the hell is going on? Susie's trying to destroy my reputation. Dave, you've seen my books. You know I'm honest." "I know that, but Mike, some of these allegations are pretty specific. Photos, documents, witness statements. All fake or taken out of context. Dave, I need you to trust me on this." There was a long pause. "Mike, I do trust you, but I've got to protect my own reputation. I think we need to put the project on hold until this gets sorted out." After Dave hung up, I stood in the middle of the job site, watching my world crumble around me. In less than 12 hours, Susie had managed to do what months of subtle sabotage couldn't accomplish. She'd destroyed my professional reputation. My phone rang again. Pat Wells. "Mike, we've got a problem. Blackwood filed an emergency motion claiming you're hiding assets and demanding immediate access to all your business accounts." "Can he do that?" "With the right judge and enough evidence of financial impropriety, yes. Mike, these social media posts are being treated as evidence of your character." "They're lies, Pat." "I know that, but we need to prove it. Fast. Do you have any way to show these documents were doctored?" I thought about the photos with Linda Morrison. They'd been taken from security cameras at a restaurant, but the timestamps had been altered to make them look recent. Maybe. Carl Thompson might be able to prove the photos were manipulated. Get him on it. And Mike, don't go anywhere alone. If Susie's willing to fabricate evidence, she might be willing to set you up for something worse. I called Carl immediately. "Carl, Susie just went nuclear. I need you to analyze some photos and documents, prove they've been doctored. Send them to me. But Mike, I've got some news you're not going to like." "What now?" "I found Linda Morrison. She's living in Buffalo, working as a real estate agent. But here's the thing. Someone contacted her 3 days ago, offering her money to come back and testify about your affair." "Someone?" A lawyer from Albany? Want to guess which one? Blackwood. Bingo. They've been planning this character assassination for days. I felt a surge of rage so intense it made me dizzy. Susie hadn't just been reacting to my investigation. She'd been planning her own attack all along. Did Linda take the money? That's the good news. She told them to go to hell. Said the affair was 10 years ago, both of you were different people, and she wasn't interested in relitigating ancient history. Thank God for small favors. There's more. I did some digging into Susie's law practice like you asked. Turns out she's been having problems at work too. What kind of problems? Missing client funds. Nothing proven, but there's been an internal investigation going on for 2 months. Susie's been borrowing against client escrow accounts to cover personal expenses. I felt a spark of hope. Can we prove it? I'm working on it. But Mike, if Susie's about to be disbarred, that explains why she's so desperate. She's not just fighting for half your assets. She's fighting for her survival. After Carl hung up, I gathered my crew together. Guys, I'm going to be straight with you. The next few weeks are going to be rough. If any of you want to look for other work, I'll understand. Bobby stepped forward. Boss, we've worked for you for years. We know what kind of man you are. This social media bullshit doesn't change that. The other guys nodded agreement, and I felt a surge of gratitude. Whatever else happened, I still had people who believed in me. Thanks, guys. But right now, I need to focus on clearing my name. Bobby, can you handle the crew for a few days? You got it, boss. I drove to Carl's office, where he was hunched over his computer, analyzing the photos Susie had posted. These are definitely manipulated, he said without looking up. The timestamps have been altered, and the metadata shows they were edited with Photoshop. Can you prove it in court? Absolutely. But Mike, there's something else. I hacked into Tommy Brennan's email account. Is that legal? Let's say it's a gray area, but what I found is interesting. Tommy's been in contact with Blackwood for over a week, coordinating strategy with Susie. Carl turned his monitor toward me, showing an email chain between Tommy and Blackwood discussing neutralizing the husband's investigation and controlling the narrative. They've been planning this whole thing, I said. Gets better. Look at this email from yesterday. Carl clicked on a message from Tommy to Susie. Blackwood says we need to be prepared for total war. If the character assassination doesn't work, we move to Plan B. What's Plan B? That's what we need to find out. I spent the rest of the day at Carl's office, going through evidence and planning our counterattack. By evening, we had enough proof of document manipulation and conspiracy to file a motion for sanctions against Susie and Blackwood. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something. Susie was too smart to put all her eggs in one basket. If the character assassination was Plan A, what was Plan B? I got my answer when I pulled into my driveway and found 2 police cars waiting for me. Officer Martinez approached as I got out of my truck. Mike, I need you to come with us. What's this about? You're under arrest for assault and battery. Susie Patterson filed charges claiming you attacked her this afternoon. I stared at him in disbelief. That's impossible. I've been at Carl Thompson's office all day. He can verify my whereabouts. We'll sort that out at the station. Right now, I need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back. As Martinez cuffed me, I saw Susie watching from across the street, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. Even from a distance, I could see her satisfied smile. Plan B was framing me for a crime I didn't commit. As the police car pulled away from my house, I realized that Susie had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because now this wasn't just about divorce or adultery or money. Now it was about my freedom, and I was going to fight for it with everything I had. At the police station, I called Pat Wells, who arrived within an hour with Carl Thompson in tow. The charges are bullshit, I told them. I was at Carl's office from 10 this morning until 6 tonight. I can verify that, Carl said. I've got security cameras, computer logs, everything. Pat nodded grimly. Susie's claiming you showed up at her office around 3 o'clock, threatened her and pushed her down. She's got a witness, her secretary. Her secretary who probably needs her job more than she needs to tell the truth. Exactly. But Mike, this is serious. Assault charges can affect the divorce proceedings, your business license, everything. I thought about Susie's smile as I was being arrested. She'd played this perfectly, creating a situation where even if I proved my innocence, the damage to my reputation would be done. But she'd forgotten one thing. I wasn't the same trusting husband she'd been lying to for months. I was someone who'd learned to fight dirty. Pat, I want to file countercharges, harassment, filing false police reports, conspiracy to commit fraud. Mike, that's going to escalate this beyond... It's already escalated, Pat. Susie just tried to have me arrested for a crime I didn't commit. The gloves are off. I spent the night in jail, but by morning, Carl's evidence had convinced the district attorney to drop the charges pending further investigation. I walked out of the police station to find a crowd of reporters waiting. Mr. Patterson, how do you respond to allegations that you've been abusing your wife? Mr. Patterson, is it true you've been stealing from clients? Mr. Patterson, what's your relationship with Linda Morrison? I stopped on the courthouse steps and looked at the cameras. For a moment, I considered just pushing through the crowd and driving away. But then I thought about Susie's smile, about Tommy's smug face, about all the lies and manipulation and betrayal. I have a statement, I said. The crowd quieted, cameras focusing on me. For months, my wife has been having an affair with her cousin while planning to destroy my business and reputation. Yesterday, she had me arrested on false charges to support her divorce case. But here's what she didn't count on. I have evidence, photos, financial records, email communications, and witness testimony that prove everything I'm saying. I pulled out my phone and held up a photo Carl had taken of Tommy and Susie entering a motel. This is my wife with Tommy Brennan, taken last week. I have dozens more like it. I also have evidence that she's been stealing from her law firm's client accounts and conspiring with her lawyer to manufacture evidence against me. The reporters were shouting questions, but I held up my hand for silence. Susie Patterson thought she was dealing with a naive, trusting husband who would quietly accept whatever she did to him. She was wrong. I'm going to prove every lie she's told, expose every crime she's committed, and make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person she really is. I walked down the steps toward my truck, but turned back for one final comment. Susie, if you're watching this, you wanted a war. Congratulations. You've got one. As I drove away from the courthouse, I felt a strange sense of calm. The battle lines were drawn. The stakes were clear, and I finally knew who I was fighting. Not just for my marriage, or my business, or my reputation. I was fighting for the truth, and I was going to win. The press conference changed everything. Within hours, my statement was trending on local social media, and by evening, it had been picked up by news stations across the region. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, supporters, and curiosity seekers. But the most important call came from an unexpected source. Mr. Patterson, this is District Attorney Rebecca Walsh. I think we need to talk. I met DA Walsh at her office the next morning, along with Pat Wells and a detective I didn't recognize. Mr. Patterson, your allegations yesterday were quite serious. If you have evidence of criminal activity, I need to see it. Carl Thompson had prepared a comprehensive package, photos, financial documents, email communications, and a detailed timeline of Susie's activities. This shows a pattern of fraud, conspiracy, and filing false police reports, I said, sliding the folder across her desk. DA Walsh spent 20 minutes reviewing the evidence, occasionally asking questions or making notes. Detective Morrison will be taking over this investigation, she finally said. If these allegations are substantiated, we'll be filing charges. What about the assault charges against me? Dropped as of this morning. Your alibi is ironclad, and we found some inconsistencies in your wife's statement. I left the DA's office feeling cautiously optimistic. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was on the offensive instead of just defending myself. That afternoon, I was back at the Morrison job site when Bobby approached with a grin. "Boss, you need to see this." He handed me his phone, which was displaying a news article. "Local lawyer under investigation for client fund theft." The article detailed an investigation into Susie's law firm, specifically focusing on irregularities in client escrow accounts. While it didn't name Susie directly, anyone who knew about our divorce could connect the dots. "How did this get out?" I asked. "Word is, someone leaked information to the press," Bobby said. "Someone with access to the firm's internal investigation." I had a pretty good idea who that someone was. Carl Thompson had been busy. My phone rang. "Jennifer." "Mike, Susie's at my house. She's falling apart." "What do you mean?" "She's been drinking since this morning, crying, screaming, blaming everyone but herself. She says Tommy won't return her calls and her lawyer's threatening to drop her case." "Where's Tommy?" "That's the thing. Nobody knows. His apartment's empty, his car's gone, and his phone's disconnected. Looks like he ran when things got hot." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Tommy Brennan, the smooth-talking charmer who'd helped destroy my marriage, had turned out to be exactly what I'd expected. A coward who ran when the consequences caught up with him. "Jen, I need you to stay away from Susie. She's desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things." "I'm worried about her, Mike. She's talking about ending things." "Ending things how?" "She won't say." "But Mike, she's not rational right now." After Jennifer hung up, I called Detective Morrison. "Detective, I just got word that Susie Patterson might be a danger to herself. Someone should check on her." "We'll send a unit to do a welfare check. Mr. Patterson, I should tell you, we found some interesting things in our investigation." "What kind of things?" "Bank records showing large cash withdrawals from client accounts, email communications with Tommy Brennan discussing how to neutralize you, and a very interesting conversation with Richard Blackwood about manufacturing evidence." "Is that enough for charges?" "More than enough. We'll be issuing warrants tomorrow morning." That evening, I was at Murphy's Tavern with Danny, trying to process everything that had happened, when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mike, it's Susie." Her voice was slurred, and I could hear traffic in the background. "Susie, where are you?" "Driving. Thinking. Trying to figure out how everything went so wrong." "Susie, you need to pull over. You've been drinking." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what's funny, Mike? I thought I was so smart. Thought I had everything figured out." "Susie, Tommy's gone, you know. Just disappeared. Turns out he never loved me. He was just using me to get back at you for some imagined slight." "What are you talking about?" "You fired him 5 years ago, remember? From your crew? He never forgot that. This whole thing was his idea. Seduce your wife, destroy your marriage, ruin your business. I was just the weapon." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Tommy Brennan hadn't just stolen my wife. He'd orchestrated the entire thing as revenge for being fired for showing up drunk to work sites. "Susie, where are you right now?" "Lake George. Where it all started. Where it's going to end." The line went dead. I called 911 immediately, reporting Susie's location and condition to the state police. Then I called Detective Morrison. "Detective, Susie Patterson just called me from Lake George. She's intoxicated and talking about ending things." "We'll get units up there immediately. Mr. Patterson, you should stay away from the area." But I was already heading for my truck. Whatever Susie had done, whatever she was planning, I couldn't just sit at home waiting for news. The drive to Lake George took 90 minutes, and I spent every minute of it thinking about the past year. The signs I'd missed, the lies I'd believed, the trust I'd given to people who'd used it against me. I found Susie's car parked at the boat launch near the Brennan family cabin. The cabin itself was dark, but I could see a figure sitting on the dock. Susie was sitting at the end of the pier, her feet dangling in the water, a bottle of wine beside her. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile and broken. "Susie," I called out as I walked down the dock. She turned, and I could see tears streaming down her face. "Mike, what are you doing here?" "Making sure you don't do something stupid." "Too late for that. I've been doing stupid things for months." I sat down beside her, careful to keep some distance between us. "Susie, talk to me. What really happened? How did we get here?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark water. "I was so unhappy, Mike. For years I felt like I was suffocating in our life. Small town, same people, same conversations, same everything. Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried. But you were always working, always focused on the business, and when I talked about wanting more, you made me feel guilty for being ungrateful." I thought about our conversations over the past few years, trying to remember if I'd dismissed her concerns. "So you turned to Tommy. He made me feel alive again, important, like I was worth fighting for." Susie laughed bitterly. "Turns out he was just using me to hurt you." "Susie, why did you try to destroy my business? Even if you wanted out of our marriage, why try to ruin me?" "Because I was angry. Because I felt like you'd wasted years of my life. Because—" She paused, struggling with the words. "Because I knew that once you found out about the affair, you'd never forgive me. So I figured I might as well take everything I could." We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the water lap against the dock. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. "Susie, the police are coming. You need to cooperate with them." "I know. I'm going to jail, aren't I?" "Probably. But Susie, you can get through this. You can rebuild your life." She turned to look at me, her eyes red from crying. "Why are you being kind to me? After everything I've done?" I thought about it for a moment. "Because despite everything, you were my wife for 15 years. And because the person who destroyed our marriage isn't really you, it's the person you became when you decided that lies were easier than truth." The police cars arrived as we were walking back up the dock. Susie surrendered without incident, and I watched as they led her away in handcuffs. Detective Morrison approached me as the cars were leaving. "Mr. Patterson, we found Tommy Brennan. He was arrested trying to cross into Canada. Turns out he's been planning this escape for weeks." "What happens now?" "Both of them will face multiple charges: fraud, conspiracy, filing false reports. Your wife's looking at disbarment and possibly prison time." I drove home in the early hours of the morning, emotionally exhausted but strangely at peace. The war was over. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory, just the end of something that should never have begun. Over the next few weeks, the legal proceedings moved quickly. Susie pled guilty to embezzlement and fraud charges and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Tommy Brennan got 3 years for his role in the conspiracy. The divorce was finalized without contest. Susie had no assets left to fight for after paying restitution to her law firm's clients. I kept the house, the business, and my reputation, which had been largely restored after the truth came out. But the real victory was simpler than that. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd thought, that I could fight for what mattered to me, and that the truth, however painful, was always better than comfortable lies. 6 months after Susie's arrest, I was having coffee at Rosie's diner when Jennifer approached my table. "Mike, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on Susie at the end, for being there when she needed someone, even after everything she'd done." "She was still my wife, Jen. That had to count for something." Jennifer smiled sadly. "She's doing better in prison, you know. Got her GED working in the library. Says she's finally facing the truth about who she became." "I'm glad to hear that." "Mike, I hope someday you can forgive her, and I hope you can find someone who deserves the kind of loyalty you showed, even to someone who betrayed you." As Jennifer walked away, I thought about forgiveness and second chances and the possibility of starting over. Susie had made her choices and faced the consequences. Now, it was time for me to make mine. I finished my coffee, left money on the table, and walked out into the bright spring morning, ready to build whatever came next.